Europe, summer 1914. Following the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Habsburg Empire of Austria-Hungary in the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo, the great powers of Europe were plunged into war. The next 4 years were to be characterised by mud, barbed wire, mines, guns, bombs, submarines, trench foot, and slaughter on an unimaginable scale. Despite a valiant British holding action at Mons, the Great Retreat that would last from the end of August to the end of September would see the British and the French pushed back to the outskirts of Paris before eventually driving the exhausted Germans back at the Battle of the Marne. Following this, a so-called race to the sea took place where the British and French attempted to outflank the Germans and vice versa, which only ended when they ran out of land. This would solidify the positions that the two sides would occupy for almost the entire war. The first day of 1915 saw the sinking of HMS Formidable by a German U-boat. It started a year of naval tragedy, as in May the former liner Lusitania was also torpedoed by a U-boat, sinking many passengers, including many innocent Americans. Meanwhile, the disastrous Gallipoli Campaign started in April, which would lead to the deaths of thousands of British, Australian and New Zealand troops in a hail of blood, bullets and flies that would ultimately achieve nothing, and would end in retreat for the Allies in January 1916. Meanwhile, the first use of gas in modern warfare took place at Ypres by the Germans, and when the British attempted to return the favour at Loos, it was blown back in their faces. Biological warfare had entered the modern world. The famous poem In Flanders Fields was written in May of that year. By 1916, the German army had a new commander and a new strategy. At Verdun, the Germans were vowed to bleed France white, and between February and December of that year, almost 400,000 Frenchmen were pulled into the charnel house they nicknamed the Mill on the Meuse. However, this strategy backfired on the Germans as they lost almost as many men, 330,000 casualties, meaning that the Germans bled just as much as France did. To relieve the pressure on Verdun, the British were pressed into a major offensive. At 7:30 a.m. on July 1st, 1916, following a week-long bombardment, British, Canadian, Anzac, Newfoundland and Indian troops with some French support went over the top in the area surrounding the River Somme. By the end of the first day, almost 60,000 British troops were casualties, roughly 7 casualties every 10 seconds for an entire day. Due to the rawness of the recruits and the confidence in the destruction of the German machine guns, the men were ordered to walk, not run. Unfortunately, the confidence in the latter was tragically misplaced, and the first day on the Somme continues to forever haunt the British Army, even to this day. Meanwhile, the only major battleship engagement of the war took place at Jutland, where despite inflicting heavier losses on the British, the German High Seas Fleet was chased back to port by the British Grand Fleet, where it would remain for the rest of the war. 1917 was the year of toil. It saw the French army mutiny. Bloody April would see German jasters, including the infamous Red Baron Manfred von Richthofen, shoot the Royal Flying Corps out of the sky almost at will, and the battle that many see as the nadir of the British army took place. Siegfried Sassoon could not have put it in better words when he wrote, "I died in hell." They called it Passchendaele. The Third Battle of Ypres, or Passchendaele as it is more commonly known, started well with a successful assault by the Canadians at Messines Ridge. However, by the time of the main assault in mid-July, the advance was quickly halted by barbed wire, bullets, and the defining feature of Passchendaele, mud. It soon became near impossible to move and completely impossible to wage an assault, yet they continued to attack, hence why this battle is synonymous with futile attrition. Following the Russian surrender of March 1918 and the mobilization of America since joining the war in April 1917, the Germans devised one last major offensive known as the Spring Offensive. It drove the Allies to breaking point in just a few months, and even retook the land won at Passchendaele for no losses. However, by mid-July the Germans had exhausted themselves, and the Allies launched the 100-day offensive that would effectively win the war. On November the 11th, 1918, at 11 a.m, the guns on the Western Front fell silent, and the Great War was ended. The cause, debatable. The price, far too high. The First World War cannot be described adequately by anyone who did not take part in it, so to end this video is possibly the greatest poet of the war and one of his greatest poems, Wilfred Owen's Anthem for Doomed Youth. What passing bells for these who die as cattle, only the monstrous anger of the guns, only the stuttering rifle's rapid rattle can patter out their hasty orisons. No mockeries now for them, no prayers nor bells, nor any voice of mourning save the choirs, the shrill demented choirs of wailing shells, and bugles calling for them from sad shires. What candles may be held to speed them all, not in the hands of boys but in their eyes, shall shine the holy glimmers of goodbyes, the pallor of girls' brows shall be their pall, their flowers the tenderness of patient minds, and each slow dusk a drawing down of blinds.